The most powerful motorcycle that money could buy featured a car-like two-section rotary engine with a displacement of 1000 cc.
It was supposed to be a sharp 500cc two-stroke V-twin to provide the power of a four-stroke liter engine, advanced chassis, high-quality components, original sporty style, and impressive characteristics. Compact, lightweight sport tourer with an elegant V8 engine by establishing your own motorcycle manufacturing company to give a boost to the declining British motorcycle.
The outcome was unveiled in Cologne in October 1974, where the impressive impact was so powerful that certain high-level managers of BMW Motorrad were terminated for permitting a detrimental effect on the company's highly significant domestic market. In addition, OCR also managed to outshine the Honda Goldwing with Schröger's clearly innovative design, which would later be widely copied by other manufacturers. At a time when the world was steadily recovering from the oil embargo crisis, when a fourfold increase in gasoline prices put an end to a decade of cheap fuel, the idea of launching such an expensive, excessive, and above all gas-guzzling motorcycle would have seemed risky. However, Henk van Wijn pursued his dream by establishing a factory for producing the OCR 1000 in his key potential market in West Germany, which was located in Duderstadt. In 1976, some journalists tested his motorcycle. The engine was impressive. In a joint project with rotary pioneers NSU and Citroën, it was also agreed upon to supply 5 and 10 engines for the OCR 1000. The OCR engine, even at 3,000 revolutions per minute, produced 60 horsepower, despite its dry weight of 292 kilograms. The performance was impressive. The bike accelerated from 0 to 100 in 3.6 seconds and reached a max speed of 224 kilometers per h. Additionally, it reached 200 in just 16 seconds. Even today, this is a decent indicator for a sport tourer. However, complaints from external testers about poor throttle response, gearbox deficiencies, and ineffective brakes were critical factors for such a fast machine with minimal engine braking. Van Wijn delays production, but it was eventually started a year later. The optimistic plans of the Dutch entrepreneur for 2,000 units per year were shattered shortly after the first few motorcycles were delivered to customers. Komodo ceases engine production due to technical issues with rotor sealing. A common issue for early engines, even for Mazda, which will certainly solve this problem later on. Van Wijn struggled with production, and in 1981, after building only 38 units, the factory closed down. But now, 40 years later, the ultra-lightweight Van Wijn has returned to production, partly due to Dutch enthusiast Jovan Rutsler, who purchased remaining Van Wijn engines not put into production. From this, he assembled the Van Wijn OCR 1000-39 for himself, but had no intention of doing anything until he met Andries Willinga, based in the neighboring northern city of Holland, a restorer of classic Citroën cars, including, of course, the very rare GSB Roehr. Together, they decided to construct 10 more original and authentic models of the OCR 1000. They restored absolutely everything, starting from the digital design and ending with a full stock of original parts and the supply of small details. Almost everything found, except for steel tubular frame, to be manufactured by Nico Becker, same as original. From this perspective, new OCR not replica, but continuation of original production. Even the aluminum wheels by Ronald were present, which were extremely futuristic at that time, as everyone was riding on spokes. There was also an original 42mm fork with horse internals and a Brembo braking system with dual piston subcalipers on 280mm brake discs. I suppose at that time they were dealing with a braking issue. Back then, all of this was extremely important and partially justified the high price. The motorcycle was exclusively produced in the company's black and green design, a standout feature used by the team's racers. The delivery time is 3 months, and only 10 units will be built, 4 of which have already been sold. The number reflects the remaining engines in stock, in which, by the way, rotor problems were solved thanks to Mazda's solutions. Now a bit about the handling qualities. The engine, powered by 2 Solex carburetors, is very smooth with no vibrations and a distinctive rotary sound, something in between 2 strokes and 4 strokes. After 2000 revs, the engine revs up explosively and does not decrease until the cutoff. The paradox is there's no actual cutoff, and the engine keeps revving without a power drop after the red zone. No risk of lifting the front wheel due to the long wheelbase and heavy engine with iron rotors. Very elastic, even at 2000 revolutions per minute, it has a serious performance reserve. Comfort is also enhanced by the hydraulic clutch, which is quite precise and simple. The seating position is upright and doesn't cause discomfort up to 140 km per h, but due to the engine's design, the right footrest location is not convenient. The clutch housing presses against your ankle, making it uncomfortable to reach the rear brake. Due to the lack of engine braking, you have to press the brakes very hard, too hard. Today, this motorcycle is priced at 85k euros, and it can be bought as a collector's item. For the rest, a motorcycle at such a price should at least have Yolen suspensions and Brembo radial brakes to fully utilize the potential of this engine. The motorcycle, of course, was ahead of its time in terms of concept and performance, but the brakes and suspension will not allow you to fully enjoy it.
Before the construction of V-Due, two-stroke engines were only fueled by carburetors. Unlike injectors, carburetors are not equipped with sensors capable of analyzing the engine's RPM, so the same portion of the fuel mixture enters the combustion chamber whether the engine is idling or at maximum speed. This leads to inefficient fuel consumption and the release of a large amount of environmentally harmful substances into the exhaust system. The situation in a two-stroke engine is further complicated by exhaust and intake ports being open at once at a certain moment. Therefore, unburned fuel mixture will always end up in the exhaust, no matter how carefully you tune the engine. Now imagine the excitement the V-Due caused in its time. Bimota claimed they solved the emissions problem with a two-stroke engine with electronic injection and ignition, something never seen in motorcycles before. The point is that electronic fuel injection delivers the mixture into the cylinder in precise portions only when necessary. The V-Due enabled precise calculation of the timing of fuel delivery to avoid passing through the combustion chamber into the exhaust pipe. And the electronic ignition calculated the spark timing. The V-Due also used forced lubrication for the lower part, while only a small amount of oil needed to be mixed with the gasoline to lubricate the pistons. Other innovations by the standards of the 90s included a cassette gearbox and a dry clutch. With such hype, disappointment was inevitable, as the miracle did not happen. The first production models began to appear in '97, and it immediately became clear that the bike had serious problems. Yes, it passed the emissions tests and the motorcycle was considered legal, but the much publicized fuel injection system played a cruel joke on the company, and the motorcycles were practically unusable. The throttle response was terrible, the engine performed poorly at constant speeds, and the power delivery was extremely abrupt, kicking in only at maximum RPM. Despite being light and fast, its power was not an ace up the sleeve among the superbikes that began to appear in the late 90s. Besides being difficult to ride properly, there were also other issues. A tendency to foul spark plugs, and some significant mechanical flaws that led to engine seizures. Additionally, it cost approximately $30,000 in price at the time of release. But not everything was so bad. While the first time in a long time, Bimota's own engine design, built by Franco and Lenny Motori, was underdeveloped. The chassis was magnificent, it looked sexy and had excellent handling. aided by a dry weight of around 140 kilograms. The front fork was kindly provided by Paoli and the rear by Öhlins. Brembo took care of the braking system. Carbon fiber was also widely used in the construction, all in the best traditions of Italy. The V-Due had every chance of finding its buyer despite the fact that it did not work as intended indeed. It was clear that the V-Due was a disaster for Bimota. They began accepting returns, and in 1998 they released an update called Evoluzione, which abandoned the shaky fuel injection in favor of 39mm Dell'Orto carburetors. Suddenly, the main feature of the V-Due was abandoned in an attempt to just make the thing work properly. But it was too late. Bimota went bankrupt in 1999 after producing 340 V-Due out of the planned 500 units, 20 of which were Evoluzione. Interestingly, one of the project's engineers, Piero Coroni, bought the remaining motorcycles and parts. Subsequently, he began modifying, fixing the issues culminating in the Evoluzione 0304 Edizione Finale models, which were introduced in 2003 and 2004. All of them used carburetors and modified engines with much greater reliability. The power was also increased to 120 horsepower for the 03 and 130 horsepower for the 04 and Finale. These bikes have a strong cult following, and their dedicated owners quickly dismissed the bad reputation surrounding these machines. Another rather interesting fact is that the main problem with V-Due is the improper sealing of the crankcase due to casting defects, not just a very failed fuel injection. V-Due can be fixed. Bimoto Spirit offers custom-made crankcases that solve this problem and allow V-Due to be transformed into the screaming sports weapon it was meant to be, if only Bimota had known. Since 1997, technology has significantly advanced, and today fuel-injected two-stroke engines are already available. Unfortunately, the dream of a high-powered, lightweight two-stroke road sport bike died with V-Due. It also killed Bimota, which fortunately was resurrected several times under new management. Today, V-Due has a small number of dedicated fans among steadfast Italophiles and two-stroke engine enthusiasts. This group supports the dream and saves V-Due from a sad reputation. Roehr is a US example of exoticism, developed by an engineer from Illinois named Walter Roehr. Built on a Harley-Davidson power unit and providing top-notch components and exclusive hand assembly, the superbike Roehr was designed to be a highly anticipated contender for the United States in the exclusive realm of manufacturing luxury sports motorcycles, which are usually dominated by European makers. Walter Roehr, an engineer from Gurnee, Illinois, a technical specialist at Volkswagen, involved in motorcycle design since the 90s. He founded his eponymous motorcycle company Roehr, which in his vision should sound like roar. His initial project involved creating a two-stroke sport bike with a unique 500 cubic centimeter twin that would introduce a revolutionary direct injection system. Meanwhile, a superbike project with a Harley-Davidson V-Road engine brewed in his mind, to be presented to sport bike fans who were monitoring the growing market of exotic motorcycles in the late 90s. Roehr first made a name for himself in the motorcycle scene when he combined two YZ 250 cylinders with a common crankcase and obtained a two-stroke engine with 115 horsepower. The RV 500 motorcycle, weighing 140 kilograms, was introduced in the mid-90s and gained recognition, but never reached full power potential due to stricter emission standards, and the company facing difficulties in implementing the proposed direct injection system. The next project that emerged from Roehr's engineering underground around 2004 was the four-stroke successor to the 500 model. The RV1000 had an 8-valve V-twin engine with a displacement of 936 cubic centimeters and liquid cooling. The engine was introduced by the Swedish manufacturer Highland. Lightweight was the goal and the main reason for choosing the Highland unit. The dry weight was supposed to be around 150 kilograms, with 120 horsepower. Not bad, but not enough to attract investors. Then in 2007, Walter announced his plans to build a limited production superbike based on the Revolution engine from Harley-Davidson, despite it weighing significantly more than the RV1000 prototype and having roughly the same power. This concept ignited some interest in the media. The Roehr 1130 was greeted with enthusiasm, but the occurrences of 2008 sparked a conspiracy against the recently emerging project. More on that at a later time. Back in 2007, reputable motorcycle publications were writing about a new American superbike that was supposed to steal the crown from Buell. Similar motorcycles with Harley engines. The Roehr resembled a blend of all exotic motorcycles of that time. Some parts of Ducati MV Agusta in bodywork, frame is similar to Bimota frames from the 90s, and a side-mounted radiator straight from the Honda RC51. What's more, it was supposed to house a powerful and relatively modern Harley Veyroth engine. This provided Walter with additional authority, as Eric Buell was still utilizing outdated Sportster engines with air cooling in his XB lineup of motorcycles. The Roehr 1130 looked like a winner. American origin, Italian style, and most importantly, the element of public desire. All of this helped propel Roehr to the forefront in motorcycle media, where the project received disproportionately many positive reviews, considering how essentially straightforward it was. In summary, the engine was highly advanced for its time. It was developed by Porsche, and it had potential for significant modifications. In the 1130 cubic centimeters version, Walter kept the engine stock and planned to build 50 motorcycles in 2008 at an attractive, in quotes, price of $39,995. Although deemed acceptable due to high-quality components and hand assembly, it's unlikely to be profitable. For this price in 2008, you could buy a Ducati 1098R or a Bimota DB7. The motorcycle, powered by a cruiser engine, could not withstand such fierce competition. The engine is in a steel frame with 2 longitudinal beams and 2 side plates made of aluminum blanks. The rear subframe supports were built with carbon fiber, like the body. The fuel tank was placed under the seat, with the fuel filler cap where the passenger seat could have been located. The imitation tank covered the airbox and air intake of a relatively tall V-shaped engine design. The engine control motors were standard from Harley, except for the chain primary drive, instead of the belt drive like on the V-Rod. Honda radiators with side mounts were employed to ensure the maintenance of a narrow frontal profile. The rear shocks and Öhlins, Marcassini wheels responsible for suspension, Brembo Goldline calipers stopped V-Roehr. The mixed salad's appearance was complemented by Yamaha R1 exhaust pipes, the headlights were from Buell Firebolt, and the instruments were from Veyroth. The project had its detractors. The Revolution engine was heavy and underpowered for a sport bike, especially when compared to the then King of the Hill Ducati 1098, which boasted 114 horsepower. Weight and lack of power were the precise reasons why Eric Buell decided not to use the Revolution in his motorcycles. Initial reviews were positive. The resulting motorcycle was surprisingly light, considering that the donor engine weighed around 90 kilograms. The handling was good, with a well-designed chassis that matched the Ducati formula. Stability with positive feedback. Some details required enhancement, but taking into account that the testing machine was just a prototype constructed in Eric's free time, the outcomes were remarkable. Power was lacking compared to competitors. 120 horsepower would have been competitive in the late 90s, but by 2007 to 2008, the situation in the sport bike category was much more intense. The 1130 retained the useful, torque-rich V-Rod character, but never had enough power to impress. At the end of 2008, the updated V-Roehr was introduced, and a new prototype was presented for consideration. Featuring the same stunning bodywork, but with a new blue-silver color and its own single-sided swing arm design, the 1250 SC used the updated Revolution engine introduced in the V-Road the same year. Otherwise, it was more or less the same machine, but now with a starting price of $49,999. It also developed 169 GP, expressing gratitude for Eric's clever supercharger, which is why we refer to it as the SC. This addressed concerns regarding the power shortage in the 1130 model. The supercharger was a highly compact device with a belt drive that was small in size, allowing it to be installed beneath the false tank. Unlike traditional superchargers, the installation on the 1250 uses a small supercharger with a high compression ratio connected to a bypass system, recirculating compressed air back into the compressor to provide instant response. The supercharger was adjusted to provide boost in proportion to the engine's rotation speed, resulting in the 1250 having an exceptionally linear power delivery without any delays. The Revolution experienced insufficient loads, rendering it ideal for forced induction with minimal modifications due to its well-suited characteristics. The SC retained stock pistons and compression ratio. An intercooler was not needed. The choice of the Revolution engine made sense here. Reviewers highly praised the smooth, wide power band and well-tuned delivery, qualities that were not experienced in any other forced induction engine. It was an impeccable, impressive outcome for a fledgling, at a time when numerous major manufacturers were still grappling with challenges related to throttle response. However, not everything was so good. Despite the impeccable product exceeding expectations, the V-Roehr was introduced at the wrong time. Until 2008, the market for expensive and exotic motorcycles thrived, like many other luxury items. As the global economy faltered, demand for pricey handmade toys plummeted in one region, particularly in the USA, where the economy sharply declined. Roehr himself acknowledged financial problems, lack of orders, and numerous cancelled deposits. In 2010, Roehr attempted to revive his brand by introducing a couple of electric sport motorcycles, capitalizing on the green trend prevalent in the motorcycle industry at that time. The Roehr e-Supersport and e-Superbike were built on a South Korean Hyosung GT 250 Armada chassis. Considering the additional weight and power of the electric mechanism, both received positive reviews from the press, which had nothing to compare them to. There was virtually no competition, but there was also no demand. Electric motorcycles were not the attractive, enticing exotic like the V-Rover. They were evidently based on the Huson with an unsightly fairing. The electric project was a commendable attempt to revive interest in the Roehr brand, but unfortunately, it was too little and too late to make a significant impact. Roehr Motorcycles closed in 2012, and very little is known about Walter Roehr, neither about his plans nor his hopes for the future. It is unclear how many motorcycles and which models have been produced in recent years. Roehr hoped to build 50 units of each V-Roehr, but it seems that only a small number were completed, including the 1250 SC, which was recently listed for sale and auctioned on eBay. It's always painful to see how the personal dreams of smart enthusiasts crumble, but Roehr was introduced at an inappropriate time during a market downturn and faced harsh criticism despite positive reviews.
Giancarlo Morbidelli was born in 1934 into a family of farmers, and at the age of 16 started working as a mechanic at a factory producing woodworking machinery. In the late 1950s, he founded his own woodworking company. Later, having become a self-made businessman, Giancarlo steps away from the industry's global leader. Morbidelli Woodworking Machinery initiates funding for its namesake racing team, Morbidelli. His sport motorcycles won 3 World Cups in the 125 category in the mid-70s. Then the coveted title in the 250cc class in 77 and another 125cc championship the following year. However, Morbidelli's fortunes declined when his 500cc inline 4s proved to be less triumphant, and by the beginning of the 1980s, his name had disappeared from racing. Perhaps Morbidelli got used to the taste of victory, and the time spent away from the spotlight stimulated him to create his dream motorcycle in the mid-80s. After 10 years of development, the motorcycle was presented to the general public. The costly 8-cylinder bike proved to be unprecedented. The Morbidelli V8 was designed to challenge names like Ducati and Bimota, but with an unparalleled combination of sportiness and comfort. Giancarlo wanted to create an exclusive sport tourer that would set him apart from everyone else. Perhaps that's why when designing the exterior, he sought Pininfarina, known for styling Ferrari and Alfa Romeo during that period of time. They made a motorcycle design so exclusive that public opinions were sharply divided. The first prototype, shown in 1994, resembled a fusion of an early Star Wars starfighter and a jet ski. Two-tone color scheme and twin headlights reminded many of Raccoon, creating negative association for some. Such a sharp public reaction to the motorcycle's appearance forced the company to postpone serial production for several years and conduct a restyling of the motorcycle. Another matter, Morbidelli engine. It was truly beautiful, compact, lightweight, and like nothing else.
Basically, it was a smaller jewelry-like version of the renowned Cosworth V8, and this name already speaks volumes. The 8-cylinder V-shaped liquid-cooled engine had a displacement of 847 cc, a cylinder bank angle of 90 degrees, and a maximum power of 120 GP at 11,000 revolutions per minute. And it was set up not as a sports bike, but more like a gentleman's sport tourer. The engine was light, quiet, and very smooth. A 32-valve engine created a captivating mix of power and balance. The motorcycle, weighing 200 kilograms, could accelerate up to 250 kilometers per h. What a sound it was in those years.
Yeah. Yeah, not as much as the BMW. This is worse.
It was indeed the engine that was the exquisite gem of this motorcycle. The intricately intertwined exhaust headers seemed smaller than they should have been, and the relatively small diameter muffler made the motorcycle appear even larger than it actually was. And how much did the logos on the engine and swing arms cost? By the way, a console swing arm with a driveshaft inside was chosen as the drive option. The transmission is 5-speed and the suspensions are 43mm GCB and a rear monoshock from the same company. Oh, there were also features like an electronic cockpit with a poorly readable digital tachometer and electrically adjustable rear-view mirrors. And of course, a woodworking specialist could not help but make a dashboard with a walnut effect. 98. The final version of the motorcycle was revealed. The design no longer provoked rejection. Honestly, they didn't ask for the moon, but a new problem arose: the price of the motorcycle. Morbidelli named it at $90,000. The motorcycle was recorded in the Guinness Book of World Records as the most expensive motorcycle. However, there were not enough people willing to pay such money for serial production. The V-shaped V8 engine, which wowed fans, failed to convey the sophistication and significance of the bike. The ambiguous appearance, which seemed vast in comparison to the elegant engine, only added doubts and uncertainties to potential buyers. Ultimately, just 4 units and a single 1994 prototype were manufactured. The idea of a distinctive lightweight and compact Italian sport tourer largely remained just an idea. Injured by the hostile reaction to his brainchild, Giancarlo soon lost enthusiasm for creating the motorcycle.
The Norton F1 motorcycle is a refined version of the racing bike RCV 588, which in the late 80s and early 90s showed outstanding results in races, including a memorable victory on the Isle of Man in 1991, where the motorcycle set a speed record of 307 km per h and won the British Championship in 1989. The civilian version of the F1 was a kind of Desmos Ricci or H2R of our time. The only sports bike in the world with a rotary engine was truly exotic. This was even reflected in its price of 45,000 British pounds. The bike was completely hand-assembled, had an aluminum frame from Spondon, featured adjustable suspensions, an inverted front fork, and a rear shock absorber from the Dutch company White Power. The track grip was provided by Michelin, while Brembo was responsible for stopping the motorcycle. The design was developed by British designers Richard Seymour and Dick Powell, who elegantly concealed all the technical parts of the motorcycle, but found a place on the fairing for the then sponsor. The motorcycle even won the Design Week Best Award. Richard then named the project Son of Beach, which provided some good additional advertising. But just a beautiful wrapper would not be enough, and the most interesting part was hidden underneath. The heart of the motorcycle was a 588cc liquid-cooled 2-cylinder rotary engine, which was fed by 2 Marconi carburetors. Compared to classic DBS engines, the rotary piston engine did not have reciprocating movements and always delivered linear and smooth power from low to medium revs, producing 95 GP at 9,500 revolutions per minute. Another distinctive feature of the engine was its sound. The soft, high roar that came from the 2 mufflers remained in memory. In relation to power and weight, the Norton F1 was comparable to typical Japanese 600S, but it had a distinct feel. It had an explosive mid-range and a howl with high frequency. But there was a dark side to the coin. Even during the engine development stage, the team faced a number of problems, including poor engine breathing, unstable operation at low revs, and frequent overheating. The engine's fueling issues were caused by air before mixing with fuel, following a labyrinthine path that involved passing through the center of the rotor shaft, compressing the incoming air and making it excessively hot. The developer of the racing engine, Brian Creighton, suggested installing what he called an exhaust ejector on the exhaust. It was essentially a Venturi tube, where everything revolves around pressure drop when a fluid or gas flows through the narrowed part of the tube. It worked like this. The process is based on the movement of air in the tube, which, upon entering the smoothly narrowing part of the ejector, increases speed and reduces pressure. The fast flow carries the external substance and rushes into the high-pressure zone. This solution achieved a massive power increase, almost doubling it, but unfortunately this technology did not make it into the production F1 model, as the initial plan was not just to replicate a racing, but to produce a reliable and durable motorcycle. Also, this technology made the motorcycle very noisy and environmentally unfriendly. But owners of stock F1s always had the option to purchase a special kit and acquire the Norton F1 Sport, which was 50 kilograms lighter and had at their disposal 135 GP. To get a copy of the racing RCV 588 with everything that comes with it. Despite all its merits and originality, the Norton F1 remained a rare and exclusive sport bike, with its main issues being the price, lack of eco-friendliness, and unreliability. However, this motorcycle has made its mark in moto history and has an honorable place alongside the NR 750, Britain V1000, and other figures on our channel. As for the racing version RCV 588, it later evolved successfully into NRS and NRV 588 with RCV 588.
And Steve Spray goes through, there's the RC Hunter, but look at the Norton go, and there goes the second one.
Stream of Rod McElhey, and the speed of that Norton is evident as he closes down the Revit straight in dramatic fashion, pulls alongside, and he's going for the lead. He's on the inside of John Reynolds, and Ron Haslam takes two in one fell swoop. An amazing move by the...
When it comes to unique motorcycles, few can compare to the quirky history and aristocratic flair of the British Hesketh, a company that has taken on several interesting transformations over the past 30 years while producing the same motorcycle since 1982. In the 1980s, the British motorcycle industry was virtually non-existent. It was a lifeless body, persisting long after it should have been relegated to obscurity. Royal Enfield, BSA, and Velocity ceased to exist in the early 70s. Norton disappeared with Norton Willys Triumph in 1978. Triumph still maintained its existence within the Meriden Motorcycle Cooperative, continuing to produce outdated models that were sold to nostalgic buyers who willingly turned a blind eye to the evident poor quality control implemented by the company. Hesketh entered the market with the intention of reviving the dying British motorcycle industry. Lord Alexander Fermar Hesketh, the third Baron Hesketh, fresh off his Formula One campaign, aimed to introduce a high-quality product that would put Britain back on the map for motorcycle manufacturing. Since the middle of the 1970s, he visualized this task in the form of a custom-made, superbly crafted, fully modern machine that would disrupt the dull British industry. Hesketh, according to the company, was meant to be the successor to the acclaimed lineup of fast, superbly built British Vincent motorcycles. Or, as some put it, to become the two-wheeled Rolls-Royce. That would truly be a gentleman's bike. In the year 1980, a highly promising new motorcycle was developed. The new bike showcased a 90-degree V-twin engine with a displacement of 992 cubic centimeters, air cooling, and a modern design meticulously created by British engine specialists hailing from Westlake. It was advertised as the first British with dual overhead camshafts and 4 valves per cylinder. For perspective, the closest competitor in specs would have been the 82 Triumph T140. Generated a total of 82 horsepower. These are quite decent numbers for a substantial push during the early 1980s. Fuel was supplied by Delorto carburetors, ignition spark from an electronic ignition system. The frame was a duplex structure made of steel tubes with the power unit serving as a stressed member. Marzocchi suspension was used at both ends, complemented by Brembo brakes. The appearance was understated yet modern. The initial generation was distinctive in that it had a group of stamped wheels. Instead of casting or forging, the wheels are composed of a rim connected to stamped metal spokes. Pay attention to the row of rivets. On paper and in photos, everything looked good. For that era, it was a beautiful with good technical specifications. He was definitely much more modern than anything that had been produced in Britain up to that point in time. Road tests showed that he was quite powerful and smooth. Production started in Daventry in 1982 at a cutting-edge facility, where state-of-the-art CNC milling machines and a computer-controlled quality control system were utilized for the manufacturing process. However, there were a few problems. Despite having good power, the performance was not sufficient. Mainly due to its heavy weight of 244 kilograms, periodic reviews were favorable but overall lukewarm, describing the V1000 as a stable bike with sufficient power and good brakes, but overall quite heavy. The company brochure was filled with polite but weak praises from the initial reviews. Soon after its market debut, issues arose with the gearbox, U-shifting, and poor cooling of the rear cylinder. Furthermore, the company operated on borrowed funds. Lord Hesketh failed to secure necessary investments for the project during this time. Instead of having sufficient external investments, he independently established and financed the company, which resulted in a financial collapse of the operation. Hesketh went bankrupt in 1982 after making just 139 motorcycles. However, that wasn't the end of Hesketh motorcycles. In 1983, Lord Hesketh relaunched the brand and introduced a new model, the Vampire, a fully fared V1000 sport touring motorcycle. Only 40 were built. The ugly style, mediocre reviews, and constant reliability issues led to Hesketh meeting its demise for the second time in '84. Wait, that is not all yet. Mick Brum, one of the testers in the Hesketh development team, demonstrated genuine interest in preserving the brand. Brum Development Engineering Company provided repair services to existing Hesketh owners. They also began making the V1000 in small amounts in eastern Neston, producing about 12 annually from 1984. Since 2011, Brum and a small group of assistants have been quietly maintaining Hesketh, manufacturing handcrafted motorcycles for numerous years. Over the years, Brum's team has developed several versions, the main one being the updated V1000, in which many shortcomings of the original machine were eliminated. They were named EN10, which stands for Eastern Neston 10, where 10 represents modifications. Significant changes were made to the chassis in 1997 to create the V1000 Vartan. The sport motorcycle without plastic reached the prototype stage, but it was ultimately never put into production because of its limited appeal and lack of investment interest. In 2011, the brand passed into the hands of entrepreneur Paul Sleiman, who revived the brand by releasing a new limited edition. Recently, the company attracted attention again after launching a new website and releasing some images of the updated V1000. They also have a Twitter feed containing company updates and production information. The new Hesketh is currently available for approximately £12,000 sterling without options, which is in fact slightly lower than the previous generations that were provided by Broom Engineering. These machines represent an updated limited series of motorcycles known as Kingswood 1000. The motorcycle is still recognizable as the original V1000 with updated details, including all modifications in both the N10, alongside chassis modifications in models like Vulcan, and many other detail changes aimed at enhancing the reliability and convenience of motorcycle use. The ongoing production of Hesketh motorcycles speaks to the quirky nature of motorcycle enthusiasts. Here is an ill-conceived and poorly managed project that made many promises but ultimately failed, never truly disappearing. Production continued despite numerous brand deaths. Today, Hesketh remains a tiny brand with loyal followers, like traditional British manufacturers. The chances of Hesketh rising and taking the world by storm are already high, but that's not the point. They manufacture premium, one-of-a-kind machines for their limited group of loyal enthusiasts who desire a distinctive, uncommon, and authentic illustration of British noble motorcycle artistry.